This is going to be a lovely session. I've really been looking forward to this. I'll begin this session. All of us know each other. I'm Anil Vanvari, Girish. I'll begin with you. You know, you come out with a FICCI KPMG report every year. Right. What have the findings been so far as the TV industry is concerned? What has it been going through in the past 9 months since you last come out with the report? Right. On the monetization side, that is on the monetization side, okay. On subscription revenues and advertising revenues, right. And other ancillary revenues.
Right. So when we did the report this year, and just to sort of set the context straight, we did the report very recently, actually just about 2 months back. What was interesting to see is numbers told us one story, right? But when we sort of spend more time trying to dig out what's really the underlying drivers, I think there were a lot of long-term heartening facts and trends that we sort of came out. I mean, the numbers obviously were deflated, GST and a lot of these other elements had an impact. So I think we should sort of keep that to the side. I think what interested us was 2-3 things. I think on the advertising side, the increasing interest levels, right, as also the increasing contribution and demand from rural markets and regional markets, I think was very heartening to see. And the reason largely being that, this sort of gives you the confidence from a slightly longer term perspective that there is more deeper and growing demand that is available. And, if you are able to, optimally monetize those, the opportunities do exist, for a fairly consistent ad growth there. I think the second thing sort of related to that was also the fact that, the FTA market seems to be again, actually starting to see a fair amount of traction over the last 2 years or so. Linked, again, it's a bit of a circular piece, again, more viewership, more measurement, and therefore, more viewership results there, and therefore more brands looking at those markets, channels getting launched. So it's a bit of a circular play. But it does definitely give the impression that if you are able to reach those markets, provide the content, there is viewership that is available out there. The third element which came out partly subscription driven, but again leading to ad plays, the whole DD free dish element. I think the growth that we've seen in DD free dish penetration over the last 2 to 3 years has been has surprised everybody. But, I think the good part again just brings out the point that there is demand, there is viewership. You need to go out there to the consumers with a product which sort of fits into their requirements, whether it is content-wise or price-wise. Once that started to happen again, the FTA market started to grow. So I think those were 2 or 3 very key underlying sort of themes that came out on the ad side. On the subscription side, I think the simple fact remains, and I think a lot of the earlier panelists have mentioned this again. I think the reality is that at 65-66% TV penetration, there is still a lot of headroom to grow. And I think whatever you may, whatever we may talk about digital, I think the reality is there is room to grow, and at least in the next few years, we will see that benefit accruing to the TV market. So I think...
I didn't mean specific, I meant specifically the last 9 months. Right. Have you seen ARPUs? I've seen ARPUs going up slightly.
So not as much actually. And I think it's got a lot to do with a bit of a wait and watch policy. I think given the way the tariff order uncertainties existed, I think nobody was really looking to go aggressive or otherwise, in terms...
Dish's ARPUs have gone up in the last few quarters. They've actually,
yeah.
You've got also, Tata Sky doesn't declare its results, but Dish's, they've gone up.
Yes, they have.
About what, 13 rupees is what I understand.
But again, I think it's not necessarily symptomatic of an overall trend. I think you will always see, different levels of, for different organizations, ARPU rates changing. In fact, when we look at the numbers last year, right, they were actually a flattish to decline on the ARPU rate, and that was again not necessarily a trend, but it was also more to do with packages and mix of packages and lower packages getting picked up. So my sense is that I think the last 8-9 months, not necessarily any real trend which indicates long-term movement, at least on the ARPU side. But I think once the tariff order strategies by organizations start crystallizing, I think that's when you will see the real changes start happening.
So where does this place the TV industry? There's this gentleman who just won the Indian Telly Awards for the best sales organization, having the best sales team. And there's this gentleman who's helping Tata Sky help monetize better. So where does this leave the TV industry? ARPUs, according to you, are not really showing significant growth. On the ad sales sides, there is growth, but it's coming on the back, you said, of GST and not real growth. Is there real growth coming in terms of?
So, no, I would sort of disagree on that. I think my general view on TV is positive. I think particularly, I think what's
I'm only talking about specific 9 months. I'm not talking about overall trend.
No, so I think that's a point, right? If you're looking last 9 months on a particular time frame, my sense is it's not really been dramatic. And I think the reason for that, the caveat I do want to put is 9 months is honestly too short a window to take a view on. Right? It is not really symptomatic of what will happen in the next 12 months, what will happen in the next 5 years or so.
I'll come to that later. I just wanted to get a lay of the land because I'm taking all towards a particular conversation. So where does this put you? ARPUs are not going up. Shareholders are looking at better returns. Where does this place you? Have you been able to raise your CP? No, you have a CPRPs, not your CPMs. We are hoping to move towards CPMs.
Well, definitely we're looking to up our CPRPs for sure. But as you rightly said that, CPRPs is not the right medium or right currency to currently.
That's being used still, right?
That's been used, and yes, and but we do relate it back to the CPMs or CPTs at the back of the envelope to work on our business. However, obviously the CPTs has been under pressure for a while. The reason being the growth of ad pie is not to the tune of the growth of the viewership or the penetration of TV viewership which has been happening. I'll again reiterate that current TV penetration are only close to about 66%, what everybody's been saying, and there is a huge headroom to grow. And as more and more options are coming, FTA is growing, so is digital TV, so is DTH. I think TV viewership is only from here on only going to grow.
And specifically talking about what you do, you sell, you have inventory, you got to monetize inventory.
Yes.
So has that been a good ride in the last, you'll have had good growths, but across the industry?
So across industry, if you see, there has been a healthy double-digit growth which is happening. If you even talk about the demonetization period or the GST period, and because of which there was a break, which you would say, which had come in play from the growth perspective, still the industry grew by single digit. It's not that it's gone back to a certain level and then growing back. So yes, the growth got stalled a bit, but has now taken back its own speed.
Now with the NTO coming, with probably disruption happening, are you worried?
Sorry, what
the new tariff order coming, with disruptions happening in distribution?
Disruption, see,
in distribution, because there will be some amount of, pull in.
The try order?
After the new tariff order.
So we still need to see how it's going to pan out. But as the way you've seen, Star has come out with the package, VZ has also come out with a package. It's pretty consumer-friendly packages, and obviously it will also grow the ARPU value, as well as declarations will start to grow from here onwards. The money which is not being passed on for the content of what the
if what you're charging the consumer goes up, he might start cutting back.
Advertiser, you're saying?
No, I'm talking about subscription. He might start cutting back. They might become cord cutters if the rate goes up too much for a subscription package.
See, there is still, why would you cut the cord? Because
he might reduce the spend.
See, there is no other option available. Even if you talk about digital, how many apps can you purchase? Alone, a Netflix today is more expensive than the entire ARPU of the digital, cable industry. So, and if you want content which is as good as on a DTH or a cable, television available, that kind of content you need to subscribe at least 10 apps, and you will end up.
But India is a piracy-driven country. We have lots of piracy, lots of TV shows all over the internet, and
correct.
Yeah.
So, but even that penetration is still not that much that, TV is, coming to you. And also the way content appointment viewing is still happening, and the viewership you're seeing it's growing. It's because of appointment viewing, ultimately. So that's not declining. And digital and TV is going to coexist. So if you see the time spent on both have increased.
No, I'm not disputing that. I totally agree there'll be various modes of consumption. I'm just trying to understand through this conversation, how are we going to monetize TV better? Because you have a problem with the SAMs of the world trying to push down the average rates they pay. You're trying to push up the rates. And they're pushing back against you very aggressively. So how is that,
these are market dynamics. If the overall revenue is growing, obviously the price point is growing. Okay, these are just few, cases which are taken up and, blown out in the media. My average price across the genres are increasing. Yes, I would say that there are certain genres which are still underpriced. Let's, for example, you've seen that South channels are 90% penetrated in terms of television, South markets, right? And so is the South channels. They are still underpriced. We need to still correct the pricing.
Kids channels are underpriced.
Kids channels are underpriced.
Yeah.
Hindi movie genre is highly underpriced, while the, I would say the kind of value you put behind purchasing movies, from advertisement as well as along with subscription, you're not still deriving the value back for the content.
Coming back to LV, but the volumes are increasing.
Right.
The volumes are increasing in terms of inventory. And there's an underpricing. So that means there is something not working right. People are willing to, you've got a lovely creation called Matrix in the marketplace, which is pushing down pricing.
No, I think...
you know what I'm talking about.
I think we got to segment this entire thing into two parts, actually. Okay. One is basically what the headline is saying. Okay. The headline is clear, the fact that television is continuing to grow irrespective of what is actually happening at the ground level with OTTs and broadbands emerging out, actually. Okay. None of these platforms have been able to scale up, or it will take time for all those platforms to scale up to deliver the kind of reach that television can ever provide, actually. So that's very clearly outlined in nature. Okay. Now, what is that growth happening in? As Ashish said, it's double digit. I'm expecting the first 9 months, it's showing around 11% growth. I think we'll end the year with the assembly elections happening now, probably around 12 to 13% growth, which is fantastic in 2018, actually. Okay. Now,
is that real growth, excluding inflation?
Real growth, actually, in terms of revenues in nature. I'm looking at. It's not volume growth. Volume growth, if I look at it, maybe over 20%, actually, okay, frankly. Now, what's happening one layer below that? The layer below that is where segmented targeting is starting to take place for advertising, okay, which is through VAS services, okay, which are coming a lot on various platforms, OTT, and as well as broadband connectivity, bringing in the OTT platforms into the home very easily in nature. There are very few homes which have Wi-Fi connection in this country which is able to translate that particular content onto the television screen as such. So what we are seeing today is actually segmented population primarily in the bigger metros, which is actually consuming a lot of content on the OTT platforms where the cord cutting has happened. Okay. But the impact of that onto the national level data on television, nothing actually.
I understand, yeah.
So therefore, the next 5 years, I don't see advertising on television ever declining in nature.
But it has never got its true value compared to other markets.
On the value part of it, actually. Okay. Value is a market dynamic exercise. Okay. There are content which are available at a lowest cost, and there are content which is available at a higher cost. Let's take, for example, sports actually as a genre. Okay. You see best of the pricing actually happening on sports, and it's coming at a premium level in nature. Take world television premieres on television, again coming at a very high level actually. Now, the question is the fact that whether I'm ready to undercut my pricing for the remaining amount of content, at the same time, get that revenue back through subscription itself, okay, by premiering the big movies and the big sports in nature. So therefore, broadcasters have realized the fact that I can play a two-way game actually. I can play the subscription bid game and I can play an advertising bid game. And whichever one gives me realistically good values at any given moment of time, I'll push that particular envelope up in a particular market to a particular segment of audiences in Asia. So therefore, even though there may be different kind of metrics that may be there. There could be CPRP, CPMs, etc., and they may be valued at different levels in nature. Okay, I don't think that's going to change the fact that television is continuing to grow.
I'm not disputing that at all. What I'm saying is, has TV really monetized itself to the level it should and it could?
I think
What has held it back?
I think it
because I
has-
believe it hasn't.
I think it has definitely brought in value itself from advertising and subscription. There are many more layers to go. Like, for example, one of the things that Ashish and myself have been discussing about is called as hyperlocal advertising, streaming that into television per se. How do I do that? For example, in print, there are 130,000 new advertisers just in the last 9 months, actually, compared to 2017. Where are they coming from? If you look at that, that's coming in from the, what we call it as hyperlocal editions of newspapers. Jagran alone has around close to 240 local editions, actually. So when you're monitoring that in the ADX data, you're seeing the fact that those guys are still not translated into advertising on television or radio or on digital yet. On the other hand, if I look at exclusive advertisers happening on digital and on television, it's very, very comparable. There are close to 16,000 advertisers uniquely positioned only on television. There are around 12,000 unique advertisers on digital ADX, actually. Now, they are just 10% of the overall volume that is coming into print. Now, if that translates slowly into regional television, that translates into digital OTT platforms for advertising, look at the growth that's television or OTT going to
No,
have.
but we are still looking at, what I'm saying is the unit price for advertising. You're looking the volume game as usual, the sachet game, rather than playing the value game, really taking the average unit pricing for advertising up. It's the lowest. It's lower than China, lower than Indonesia, lower than in many countries.
Actually, even lots of things are lower than all the other countries.
So India is not going to change, in your opinion, where value will come into advertising?
It doesn't need to change dramatically. It's changing for the products that it needs to change. Like, for example, sports, world television premieres.
But it's nowhere next to what other countries get for their premiers. Even Singapore probably gets more rates, higher rates.
So, but that is, linked to the purchasing parity of the country as well. As the purchasing parity of the country increases, that's how the overall price points will also increase. You can't relate a US, price point of a television to
US, but at least get to 10%.
even to that matter of fact, Indonesia. While Indonesia and us are pretty similar in terms of the content consumption as well as penetration of television, etc. So,
Look at growth rates, over there, the percentage growth rate on television industry is around 3% to 4%, actually. US is around 2.5%. Okay. India is around a double digit of 11%. Probably the only country, and the closest coming in is China, around 8.5% to 9%. Although they may be...
There the rates are higher, much higher.
Rates are higher, of course. But over there is a monopolization happens over there with the cartelization of the CCTV. Okay. In India, it's a free democratic outplay that happens on television.
But are they undercutting each other? Is everyone just resorting to undercutting here rather than working together to raise pricing? Is what I'm getting at in the broadcast sector.
Then you will have
Because
guy coming in and saying the fact that this is cartelization happening. So you can't have an industry where you're trying to grow by bringing everybody together and saying the fact that, okay, let's now all increase prices, or else your telecom operators will not be bleeding today, right? So it's a free play.
Just a point to actually add to, I think, there's something we have to be a little careful about when we talk about rates in particular, right? I think when we compare with other places, you also got to be careful about the ecosystems. Forget purchase price, priority or anything. Just look at the ecosystems, right? I think fundamentally, globally, at least most of the developed markets where we are comparing to, these are pay TV ecosystems where fundamentally pay channels are not ad-led. They are subscription-led in principle, right? Which effectively means that the ad pie, the ad inventory that is in general that is available is comparatively, slimmer, so if you want to call it that. And therefore, so therefore it's a more supply-driven, not necessarily.
There's a lot of supply here.
No, but here the situation is reversed.
There's a lot of supply.
That's the point, right? So in a situation where the supply is much larger, right, you will obviously have a situation where the rates are going to be depressed.
Absolutely.
So I think in principle, India is always going to be a market where the rates of advertisement will be lower. But the fact is, given the level of demand that is there in the country from a consumption perspective, the growth will also be much higher than what you will see globally.
I understand. Yeah. I wanted to get to this point and then move on.
I
So
just
how?
want to
Yeah.
add
Okay.
one more
Continue.
thing over here is that I dare to say, probably in the next 5 years, in 2025, when we have this conference, we'll be seeing the fact that the price per unit at an overall level will lower than what it is today.
How many of you will agree? And how many of you are open to this idea that the price will be lower than what it is today? I mean, what's that going to do to the economics?
And I'll give you the reasons too, actually. Okay? That's purely because of the fact that there are more content available. Audience are discovering new content. They're discovering through various other ways. So television advertising will become programmatic in nature. Okay? And once
That's the worst thing that could happen.
it's bound to happen. That's the amount of volume and the content available in the marketplace, actually. So
TRA has tried to reduce the volume through the regulation.
regulation, but
Yeah.
that doesn't allow. For example, if Ashish takes over the entire city cable inventory into his fold of the Z inventory in nature, okay, and sells at a market town level inventory itself, his volume will be exploring. And at that volume, you can't have a salesperson going down and talking to a media planner or a buyer and saying that, okay, this is the transaction I'm actually having. It will have to be done programmatic. It will all be landscape.
Just to add to him, we have already taken those steps. If you, I don't know whether you're aware or not, but we have launched an online, buying medium through which is called zmitra.com, and which is to actually start discovering the last mile advertisers and, as he said, hyperlocal advertisers. Now, television is a medium which is not hyperlocal, but can be made hyperlocal. So depends upon how you make it hyperlocal. A ZTV cannot be hyperlocal, but city cable is hyperlocal. The content pushed through city cable is hyperlocal. So it depends what kind of through which pipe you're pushing your content, and that content will have its own requirement in terms of advertisement, etc. That will increase the volume of advertisements. It will also bring in a lot of new advertisers, and the dependency on the large advertiser, which are right now controlling the overall volumes on the television business right now, the dependency will start to go down. So we have to build, and we are in the process, and most of the broadcasters, not only us, but many other broadcasters are working on how to now bring...
Geo-targeting through other platforms did
Yes.
not really work very well. It didn't work very well. I mean, you pulled out of that. Probably you were the last one, I think.
I won't say it didn't really work well. It's worked well. Actually, we were the lead.
You were, yeah. But haven't you pulled out from it, or you still continue with Amagi and...
So we have taken over the sales, and now we're using the technology, and we are spreading more and more, geo-targeting through this thing. I think there are more steps to be taken to actually increase the, ad pie through geo-targeting. There is an immense, what you call, scope in that, but it needs to be worked upon. Because see, today, most of the ad sales teams are currently involved with, getting that volume of business from the big advertisers. We need
Why not
to
think of
expand our
value?
base.
Why until thinking value? Why just volume? Why not reduce
value-
inventory, increase inventory
that's
somewhere?
what I'm saying. See,
Yeah.
we as Z at least are working on the mix. You have to start working with the real mix, how to get value and volume both together.
Okay.
Believe you me, I mean today, if we are growing 2x of the market, is only because not only we are getting the volume, we are also getting the value. My price point from what it was last year to this year has increased in every channel. Now, somewhere it has increased more, somewhere it is not increased more. We as an organization believe that we need to take, especially wherever we are leader, we try to explore, market which has, from a perspective of potential and not perspective of a target. We have to achieve this number which an organization is given. So we look at the business from a perspective, what is the potential of this market, and then accordingly we increase our price point or not. So that is the price discovery. And then obviously there is a volume discovery in terms of where more and more channels and more content can be pushed, shown to the consumer, and in return that will start bringing us advertising revenue, as well as probably a distribution revenue also.
So they're working on a mix. What lessons can the cable industry learn from this? Because the cable industry has the landing pages when you log on to it, have they really exploited that according to addicts?
I think the cable industry has a lot to learn from the DTH industry. Okay? If you look at the DTH industry, the way they have gone about looking at understanding customers and therefore creating vast services. Okay? And Arun pointed out that in his conversation in the earlier panel. That is the clear moot point which the cable industry has not understood. It's not that everybody again in the cable industry has not understood. There are some of them who have done it beautifully. Okay? If you look at somebody like a GTPL, okay, they've created channels which is very, very localized in nature and enable that content to flow into the homes and seeing revenue flow, inflow happening in for those channels. And City is the other one that has actually over years, I still remember in early 2000 when the discussion happened on City content and the way they were streaming it in individual pockets to create hyper-localization of content consumption over there. So there is therefore enough opportunities to do monetization of content very well, even on the television side at a very, very localized level in nature. What it will do is basically it will give a good fight to the digital industry. Today, digital, like in YouTube, is romping home with victory because television is not able to deliver the last mile, actually. But tomorrow, I think television will stand up to that and say the fact that here is it, you define the target segment. You go to the website of Z-Mitra, define whom you want, we'll deliver you that audience with so many impressions. And that impression, this is the value in it. So at a per unit value, it may be as close to what a YouTube charges at around, say, 25 rupees per impression, actually. But overall, that new advertiser will contribute to the growth of that particular organization and the overall industry growth itself.
That's an interesting point, that television could compete with Google going forward. When do you see that happening? Because on the other side, YouTube is selling its homepage at 1.25 crore. On the other side, there's programmatic happening. So when do we see this is, there's a great divergence coming in?
YouTube Masthead is like an IPL sponsorship, actually.
Yeah.
You take the masthead and you take the sponsorship, big value in nature, for the reach that it provides.
Absolutely.
Advertisers who want that reach will go pay that particular premium even to television or to digital and get that particular reach emphatically in nature.
So are we seeing that in television? I'm not seeing that kind of a...
Even television, it's happening. Okay, if Ashish is going to sell a world television premiere, he's not going to price it at equivalent to what a Z Cafe is actually selling it at, actually. He's going to charge a premium for it, and advertisers are going to come for that blockbuster movie by paying that.
And is it happening?
It is happening.
What's the difference?
Difference.
In terms of scale, is it 5 times? Is it 10 times? Is it equal to what digital is giving you?
So if I have to compare,
I don't think so.
Let's say medium to medium, let's say I do a premiere a movie on my cinema channel, the price point of my premiere versus my actual cinema rate, it is at least more than 20 times. And advertiser is fighting to grab that inventory.
Okay.
As I fill up my inventory, my price point goes up. That's how it is bought.
Sure, I understand. But so how are we going to monetize? We've got to this level. We are getting 12% growth. But can we monetize it better? What are the other opportunities apart from hyperlocalization? What are the other opportunities television has, and cable TV has, and DTH has?
See, yes, we can monetize it better, obviously, but what is happening is that we should not shy away from the competition coming from digital, etc. We need to invest in technology. How to make television medium more, for bang for its buck. In terms of, today advertiser is looking more and more for the value creation for his or the ROI from a perspective of how his money is being spent rather than where his money is being spent. Because in digital, his money is actually, his ad is getting lost. He doesn't know where he's actually, so his discovery of ad itself is very difficult in digital. So even on digital, he's willing to pay much higher premiums for within an environment of content which he wants to present his ad. And TV is very much knowing that where is, advertising. So hence, what we need to build is that A, obviously invest in technology. B, we need to keep on going back to the advertiser with more value propositions. And for that matter of fact, we have already created a content and partnership divisions. So we are, including, their branded content, short form content. So we have to compete digital from that perspective on television. Yes, the only thing which TV as of today cannot do is engagement, which is getting from digital. But still the brand awareness is at least 5 times of what it is on digital or print. You cannot build your brand unless you advertise on television. It's even true for very mature markets like US, etc. So it's brands still are made. So
But
to give
brand
you a
loyalty.
very raw kind of an example. You would, so when you say engagement, so you would not like to walk, to talk to a person who's walking on the road, right? Because you don't know him. You can engage with him, but you cannot, talk to him. But a celebrity is passing, and you want to talk to him, you would want to talk to him, so probably will that person be, because that celebrity has been made a brand, and that celebrity becomes a brand through certain medium. And I think today all celebrities are made through television or cinema, right? So it's about this, first your brand building. You have to trust in somebody to engage with that brand. So brand building happens on television, and then it follows from a perspective of engagement on digital. So both mediums have its own distinct advantage. That's what I'm trying to put here.
Again, you're saying programmatic is going to come to television. That's going to push price points even further lower, because that's what they want.
So can I just I think one other way to look at this, right? If you want to truly think, saying, what can you do which is probably not being done enough now, right? Because whatever we are talking about currently is basically the way TV has been functioning, for quite some time. Whatever changes are being trying to be done, they're largely baby steps in that sense, right? I think 2-3 factors are relevant, but I think the primary one that I think we need to start thinking about is, we tend to talk, whenever we say TV and digital in the same sentence, it's literally, in a very competitive sense. But I think outside of video streaming, digital technologies and digital platforms in general have a lot to offer television, right? I think there are certain things digital technologies offer and digital platforms do very well is around analytics and around targeted, targeting the consumer. Now, TV in general might have certain, restrictions and constraints around how do you go to an individual and target. But the reality is that there is definitely a far more, potential to at least do more group level targeting, to, go, much more, at a lower level of demographic targeting, which at the moment doesn't really happen, because it's a bit of an ecosystem issue. Advertisers don't think like that, agencies don't think like that. It's a bit of a circular thing, but the point is, I think as technologies are evolving, there are opportunities to actually leverage digital in a far more complementary manner to television and use that then to grow ad rates and all. You will still probably see the mass level advertising probably continuing to happen in the similar way, but more and more niches, and targeting niches will become available, once we start thinking down those lines. I think that's potentially the only real change that you can actually think of, at least in the current context.
Whereas you can't have a pushback from television, which then talks about reducing inventory and raising the value. That's something you're not in favor of.
You look at it this way, right? In any business, it is not something that is also truly feasible, specifically in consumer businesses, right? Because given the mass level of demand that happens, it is not something that you can genuinely go and control and say, okay, I want to reduce inventory, because reducing inventory at the same time also means reducing the content that is available to the consumer in some form.
It's actually increasing the content. If you reduce inventory, you increase content.
Maybe so, but the point is, from a broadcaster perspective, the minute he reduces his inventory, the assumption, it works well in a very equilibrium market that, okay, I reduce inventory, supply has gone down, so demand should go up. But the reality is that doesn't necessarily follow that linear pattern, right? And and therefore you've got to a situation where your ad revenues have dropped down, And your subscription obviously.
It'll drop for a while, but in the mid to
Add to Girish's point, for a 10% drop in inventory, I get around 2 to 2.5% increase in the viewership numbers. That's it.
Okay.
So it's not the fact that inventory is creating a block in the viewership numbers. That's clearly established. Of course, you get too many advertising, huge clutter. Yes, there will be a bigger.
There is a clutter.
But
Currently, there is clutter.
If you look at the general entertainment channels, okay, the dip in an advertising break is around 20%. That's it. Okay. So if you remove the advertising, you'll get it to 20% consistency between pre and post actually. For a sports, okay, the ad break signifies nothing. Okay. The pre and post is equivalent actually.
No, I'm watching television. I see ads being broken. I see between overs, and the use of inventory is very poor.
Therefore, if you want to look at increasing the value, actually, there is a 3-step process actually. Okay. Step 1, understand what is the brand's equity level presently. Okay. So if the equity is pretty strong with the consumers, you're going to get a good value from an advertiser and a subscriber in nature. And how does that come about? That equity gets developed by characters, storylines, content that you put forward to, and communication or marketing communication to the end consumers. Second, once you have assessed your equity levels, put a fix, like an MRP exists for a brand. Okay. Put an MRP for subscription, put a ARP, advertising rate pricing for advertisers. Okay. So you have a fixed MRP and a fixed ARP in nature, below which you can play around. And third is continuously monitor how that equity is growing so that you can change the MRP and ARP based on like promotions, etc. comes into play. So you have a maximum pricing, retail pricing, and after that your promotions play around with a bandwidth of pricing in nature. And the classiest of all these work has been done, I think, by Tata Sky actually. Today the Tata Sky ARPUs are highest purely because of the fact that they've executed that element so beautifully over the years together. Whether it's communication, whether it's pricing, whether it's targeting, you can see that all playing out pretty well in nature.
All right, it's been an interesting conversation for me. I don't know if it's been interesting for the audience, but if there are questions, I'd love to have questions shot to them. Or has everyone understood everything about monetizing television better? Yeah, Raj? Can we have a mic for Raj, please?
I don't have a question, but I have a certain observation. I think programmatic in television will not come, at least for another decade. And it
Hope it doesn't.
And it shouldn't come if any broadcaster does it. For the last 10 years, the industry has been trying to do that. I think they are shooting themselves in the foot.
In the head, not the foot.
Yeah, in the head. I was trying to be polite. Having said that, also I think, to look at when you're saying hyperlocal and comparing local advertising with broadcasting, this is an experiment we did about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, 10 years ago. News channels, one of the things we said at that time, because there were lots of news channels, we said, how do you go and get local advertising? And there was a separate team that was put in place to scan every local newspaper, and they marked all the ads that were there, whether it is a submersible set or whether it is a inverter and things like that, and identified people in places like Satara and whichever, Ghaziabad, and all over the country. There is a problem. The moment you went and got that ad, because half these people who we approached, first of all, they said, "Hamare paas film nahi hai." So we said, "Hum bana dete hain film," because you can make an ad in 50,000 rupees. So you can build it in the cost. And you can buy a national news channel today at 750 rupees for 10 seconds. It's as cheap as that, sometimes cheaper if you negotiate how you negotiate. You can actually wish your wife happy anniversary on national television by writing out a personal check. So we did that. We still managed to get advertisers with small money, 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, and we got some advertisers. And the problem with that was, the moment the ad came on national television, all your competitors said, "Wow, there's a new client who's come on TV." So all the competing broadcasters reach that person in Satara or wherever he is. And he said, मेरे पास तो 5 ही लाख रुपए थे. बोलते, हम आपको, उन्होंने 10 लाख में किया, हम आपके लिए 7 लाख में करेंगे. So suddenly, a new client that you had built feels that you cheated him because somebody else has gone and offered him a lower rate. Forget that. All the advertising agencies, including the biggest agencies of the country, land there and tell him, because they think it's a big advertiser, right? They've seen it on national television. That is one problem. The other big problem with this hyperlocal advertising is the fact that, please remember, television has limited inventory. It is not a newspaper where you can go on printing ads, or it's not digital medium where inventory is in surplus. There is what you said is true. There is a supply-demand problem that we have, because of which our advertising rates are not going up. But I think the industry is to blame for it. You don't have to catalyze, but you can bring certain, we lost many opportunities. You know, we've been discussing about CPT for the last a decade. And when we moved from TAM to BARC was probably the best time when even BARC went on issuing reports on impressions. The problem, it's a mindset problem. When we speak to advertisers, you know, it's a number game. When Google or anybody says 200 million impressions, the sound 200 million sounds wow. What do we go and say? 2 GRPs, 2 TRP. 2 versus 200 million. It's a mindset problem. Until the broadcasters change the mindset, comparing impressions to impressions, I don't think you will get the rates up. Broadcasting is a most powerful medium. I met a client recently who spends a lot of money, and he's in the digital business. And he told me, the only reason I'm spending money with you, he spends about 20 crores with us. He said, the only reason I spend money with you is because he's into online business, right? So he said, the only reason I spend money with you is because most of my business happens online, but India, when people see somebody, it's a trust deficit country. When people see something on television, they say, yeah, I can trust this brand. For the trust, he's advertising with me. And it creates that impact. All the digital players, online players, including Amazon, including Google, advertise on TV. That speaks a language in itself.
I totally agree with you. So there is a need for you all to come together, is what I'm stating. The 3 A's of I comes together when it wants
Raj
to.
just, echoed my sentiment as I said that, you have to build the trust and from a brand perspective. That has to happen, that happens on TV. After that, you engage with that, brand. Which is online.
It's going to become exactly the same thing which is happening on national television with big brands. Matrix has come in, picking up inventory on networks and cutting down the price. You all guys are willing to, maybe Z's not, but a lot of the other broadcasters are, and that's becoming the norm.
Not really.
It's a worrisome trend, is what I'm saying for the broadcast sector.
Let me, put things in perspective. I think it's a misinformation. See, first of all, as you Raj just said that television is a medium which has fixed inventory. Okay. Now, first of all, I don't want to really comment on somebody else's business model. But end of the day, if that is impacting my business, how do I protect my business? The way most of the top, 10 to 15 broadcasters, how they work, is they work from a client-specific, rates, client-specific, business deals, etc. So question of offering agencies bulk volume discounts is not there.
No, not with the top 15, but there are a lot of others, and so you're losing that audience.
Top 15 or top 10, broadcasters are giving you 90% of the impression on television. If that balanced 10% of impression coming from 200 television channels is selling at whatever price is because they probably are not able to sell their inventory. And if they're selling at discount, it does not really matter because that is not going to decide the price point of the industry. The price of the industry is being decided by the top leading channels. And that is where the discounting is not happening. So obviously, if there was a discounting happening, then there wouldn't have been a growth in television.
When I speak to agencies, it's happening even with the big broadcasters. But let's leave it at that. It's happening across all of you all. So I won't argue on this issue, but I'll rest my case here.
Anilji, I have one question for Mr. Ashish. Yeah. Excuse me.
Identify yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm an LMO from Maharashtra, Mumbai, representing MGOF and Maharashtra Nonirman Cable Sena. One question for you, Mr. Ashish. This new tariff order which is coming, now a consumer will have to pay for the each channels, right? Suppose he subscribes one pay channel. Now, previously he was getting a bundle of the packages. What he used to pay was 200 to 300 rupees. Now suddenly new tariff order comes and he has to pay for each channels. Now this will impact your advertising in some ways because he knows that he is paying for that channel. And the amount of advertising nowadays coming, all the regional channels and everything. So somewhere I think so the consumers will be aware that he is paying for the content, not for the advertising. And there was a capping of advertising where TRAI had a rule of capping the advertising. I don't know what happened to that rule.
It's being followed by each broadcaster.
Yeah.
At least broadcasters, those who matter.
Yeah.
And so what he's asking is when the rates become transparent for the subscription rates, there may be a fall off in the number of subscribers. Therefore, there'll be a fall in audience for a channel that could lead to a loss of revenue for. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm trying to say that a consumer will pay, suppose around 19 rupees for a channel. He says, I'm paying a 90 rupees for a channel, but the amount of advertising I'm getting to see in that channel is much more comparatively to the international channels what he sees.
See, I don't think so. Consumers will end up paying more from a TRAI perspective. It's still to be seen how the packages will work out. Here, TRAI order basically specifies giving an individual consumer his choice of viewing and accordingly pay price for that. Consumer is already paying through pay digital or DTH a price for the content, a certain price for the content, and still watching advertisement on those channels. Okay, so he's already habitual of that. Currently, a DTH or a cable operator is, let's say, offering 800 channels or 600 channels, but he's not watching all of them. It's only his choice which is there, but once he's given a choice, he will probably choose 200 channels, let's say. He will end up paying probably the same price what he's been paying earlier. But now that he's chosen a certain amount of channel, there will be obviously some shakeout in terms of very small channels who do not really get advertisements, do not get too much of viewership, may fall out on these things, but the stronger content channels will obviously thrive here. And I think it will only grow my advertising rates also. Reason being, now I can actually go back to the advertiser and say, boss, earlier I was available in the pipe and BARC was measuring me. Now my channel is being really subscribed by the consumer. So he's subscribing only because he's watching my content. And if my content is being watched and asked by the consumer, I will charge you more for the advertisement you're going to show it to him because he's involved now. He's an engrossed viewer.
But this is contrary to what LV is saying. He's saying price points are going to fall further going forward.
He made a very broad comment,
Yeah.
Okay.
Why a consumer will pay for an ad he wants to watch? A pay channel should not have an ad. If he wants to pay for the content, he should pay for the content.
No, I think 2 points here. One is the fact that consumers are not averse to advertising. I think that's something that we got to be conscious about. It's not that all consumers are against advertising, because that's also an information source about the brands that they want to live and breathe with, actually. Second, when I said price is going to fall down, what I mean by that is basically, let's look at some of the models that's operating in the rest of the world, actually. Today, there's a huge amount of content getting produced at a high cost by channels, actually. If that content gets moved down the lane and starts operating at a very, very localized level in different languages. For example, it's already happening where Hindi content is getting dubbed into Tamil and rerun in Tamil channels, etc., or in Bengali channels, etc. So what it does gives is the fact that there is a content cost that's taken care of, actually. There's only a licensing revenue that's coming into the main broadcaster. The other guy is actually airing advertising, for which he's not paying huge amount of content production cost. Therefore, he's able to bring down the cost at a at a heavy level actually for advertisers.
I believe there is a need to raise prices
Yeah,
in the
but-
industry.
but-
We have a 17 point or 15% margin which the agencies, which has fallen now. They take service fees and all that, the agencies. So I believe the industry as a whole needs to come up with some parameters, broad parameters.
What's going to happen, Anil, is the fact that at the top end of the market will continue to grow and fuel prices at a high cost. The bottom end of the market will continue to reduce cost and
So the average prices will.
and therefore pull in more advertisers and new advertisers into the system actually. And you see that on print already happening actually. So there's nothing that stops, and digital it's already happening.
I think there's also a question of what triggers the change, right? And I think the point Ashish made is very valid about the volume of channels that will actually end up getting subscribed. I think that the reality is that
Anil.
there is.
Yeah. Let them, you want to ask a question? Let him finish.
Passing
Let
it to
Girish.
Anil Kheda, not Anil Banwari, so.
1 second. No, you wanted to ask a question, right? Okay.
So the point is that as the lower end, the spectrum of channels actually, once that reduces, right? And the channels that are actually getting sold are the ones which are also getting watched. That trigger, which hopefully will
When do you see that happening? 2 years or 1 year?
I think so. The tariff order is the trigger for that.
I
Right? It
understand.
offers the opportunity.
So that, but it's still going to take 6 months to 9 months?
It will take about a year, in my
Yeah.
view, to stabilize. But once that stabilizes, and once the viewership results start,
Reflecting.
getting reflected appropriately, there an opportunity arises for broadcasters to then start thinking through, saying, okay, now how do I start increasing my rates? Because now my viewership, my subscribers are more reflective of what the on-ground demand is, and therefore I have the ability to go out in the market, ask for more without the lower end of the spectrum pulling it down as much as it is doing now. Because there will be some churn that will happen in the lower end of the spectrum for sure.
Sure. Prashant?
I have to make 2-3 observations. One, I agree with Raj, whatever I wanted to say, a lot of the things he has said. We just made LV into Partho, TAM into Bark, nothing has changed. IBF has to be blamed. They pushed us from LV to Partho, nothing has happened. We should have changed that time, that we will sell on CPM. That is one. TAM was doing a brilliant job. Bark is also doing a brilliant job, but we are paying more. Number 2, I don't subscribe to LV's submission that rates will go down, but I agree with his logic that the uppermost channels prices will go up, and because advertisers want to retain that CPRP, they will try to crush the lower on order. That will drive consolidation because a lot of people will get out of the business. So that is where, if you are not a 5 to 10 channel network, you will not be existing in the next 3 years. A minimum 10 channel network will survive. That is what we realized earlier, and now we are close to 9. We have 1 left for survival. If we manage 10, we will be surviving.
What about programmatic? Programmatic is going to roger the shit out of you.
Nothing. I don't also agree with Ashish's submission where he says that only 8 broadcasters matter. This is also a point of contention that DPOs have to look at variety of platforms, variety of broadcast platforms, I mean. When I distribute my channel in Europe, they say we need diversity in content. They are mandated by the board that you have to subscribe an X percentage of money of subscription to small players because they don't want cartelization to happen, because the more the smaller players get out, the bigger ones will become more bigger and more bigger and more bigger, and that gave birth to Netflix. Netflix must have been one of the main players where he said, I will not give you carriage. And he said, okay, I'll go through internet. Something somewhere has happened like that, and today is bigger than all of them. Another thing, what are the CPMs? I would like to ask LV. How much time does a person watch on internet is counted as 1 impression, and how much time, Ashish, somebody watches on television is counted as 1 impression?
1 minute, sir.
1 minute versus 2.
And on 6 seconds on internet. So their impressions are completely fraudulent. Engagement on television is higher than engagement on digital. Engagement on digital is bullshit. We have 200,000 auto and rickshaw drivers, 100,000 drivers, 200,000 servants. That is what consumes internet. If I am working the whole day, everybody is working, that is the audience that matters. We go home, the whole day we are sitting in front of laptop and mobile phones. I want a remote, I will pick up Tata Sky, put the channel, sit down. I am in no mood to search again. I have searched the whole day, who has sent me an email, whom I want to reply, what happened to that. I have to work, I have to also find out where is Ashish Sehgal on LinkedIn, connect with him. And again I will go home and again hunt for Netflix. I am sorry. I will go home, take the remote, watch on TV. Linear will survive, CPMs have to grow. We need an association outside of IBF which will drive this, because IBF has too many objectives. We need an association just to push advertising sales differently. Let's have I think we need try to tell us, sell only on CPM. I think we should write to Sarma.
Frankly, we don't need an association. If every broadcaster and every channel guys has his own objective to actually, create a rate card and do not budge from there, automatically your price point will start getting discovered. So yes, there are pressure of businesses to everybody.
अरे आप करेंसी तो चेंज करो, या तो शर्मा को बोलो कि सीपीएम का लॉ लाओ, जैसे टैरिफ ऑर्डर आया ना वैसे एडवर्टाइजिंग ऑर्डर लाओ.
Correct. Sir, so we have been propagating.
You should write to Sarma कि भैया सीपीएम पे बेचो.
So to give you a perspective.
When you are not there, digital 4 seconds is one impression. For us, 1 minute is one impression. Exactly. I am saying, Anil, do an experiment. You find your own TG, run a campaign on digital, go and see the channels where your ads have been served. You will be shocked. I have done that experiment. Targeted advertising on digital is a myth. It's nonsense. I am guaranteeing you. Can anybody prove me I can do targeted advertising? I will stop broadcasting from tomorrow.
अरे यार इतना ऐसे मत बोलो यार.
अरे गोवा में हूँ ऐश करूँगा.
जुगाड़ होता है.
आप प्रूव
जुगाड़ होता है.
मैं कह रहा हूँ आप प्रूव ही नहीं कर पाओगे.
जुगाड़.
No. Television is television.
Nobody has spoken true this evening as my friend here. Give him a big hand.
And believe me, Raj Nayak was the first person to sell digital in India.
True.
MSN.
Yeah, so therefore you agree with me there's a need for the industry to come together and set benchmarks. CPM is the way to go, and also they need to set benchmarks.
We should be having 3 times digital impressions rate, I am saying. If YouTube is selling at 150, we should be selling at 450. Why? Because I am giving you solace. I am giving you whole 30-second impression. We should push digital to measure 30 on. If the full ad is not seen, no impression. We are actually, your questions are also wrong. Do you think you can fight Google? I am saying, can Google fight with us? You are asking wrong questions. You should.
Thank you for improving my question.
Anil,
I appreciate it.
Anil, what is interesting is the whole IBF and BARC, which was set up by the IB.
Exactly.
Okay, decided to come with something called ACOM, where you would bring parity in terms of measurement between digital and television. It's been 2 years since we've been speaking about it. We've been saying it will come on this day and this day, and as far as I know, it's right now up in the air. And that tells you a lot about our industry.
Yeah. All right, that is on a depressing note that we are ending this session. Very depressing note, except
No, not depressing. In spite of that, advertising is growing and revenue is
but
growing.
it's not really finding the true value, which is what I started saying.
Anil, 20% volume growth and 11% value growth. This tells you that the rates are going down.
But his rates are going up.
He is in a big network, no?
No, also revenues are growing.
That's why you're giving me the award.
Adding channels. See, that's the thing. That's what's happening. You're building new businesses and your revenues are going
But
up.
that's going to be a challenge when you have the tariff order. The channels will not be subscribed.
No, but the thing is, with the tariff order, at least the subscription part, revenue part will be taken care of. You will start discovering you will start getting true value, what should come to the broadcaster, and
Absolutely.
it will be a, so subscription, I think, tariff should have taken, this RIO should have taken place 10 years ago. Anyway, better late than never. But for advertising revenue to go up, one of the ways is like, I think you need a mandate that it will be CPMs only. And once you do that, because, you know, I remember 20 years back, it was, or 25 years back, it was 14 million households. Today we are 80 million households, 190 million households. Okay, we have not got the benefit of the increase in subscribers. We haven't got that.
That is what I began
That
the
is
discussion
partly,
with.
and the beauty about it is, about 12 years ago, it was the advertising agencies who made presentation to all the broadcasters saying, let's go the CPT route. And the broadcaster said no. How do you like that?
Exactly.
And now it's the broadcasters who are saying, let's go the CPT route, and the advertisers are saying no.
Because they've been spoiled.
Exactly. And more importantly, it's also because I think the advertising agencies have no skin in the game. Okay? Because they have no skin in the game. For them, they're arbitrage, right? They're just making commission on whatever they sell at. So it doesn't matter to them at what rate they're selling. As long as they sell, as long as they're doing business, as long as they get their commission, they're happy. Unless you involve them, or we should, I don't know how you do it, but there must be a mechanism where they should have a skin in the game. If they have no skin in the game, they shouldn't be there.
I understand. So let's take get some good takeaways. We have to move towards CPM. Prashant, are you leading that charge for the industry?
If somebody gives me a mandate, I will drive it. Why not?
Sir, so let me add here, while you rightly, I mean, CPT is the way forward. We are all, as broadcaster, everybody is actually pushing it. But end of the day, there are certain, I would say, responsibility from a broadcaster's perspective also. We should not forget that. And, it is for us to educate the advertiser that, today you cannot paint the brush across board the kind of content being presented by individual broadcaster or individual channels. There is a single paintbrush which is being painted across all kinds of content which is being presented. Like he's saying that today there are certain unique content channels which needs to be priced differently than the way you're pricing a mass channel. Right?
Yeah, but he's spending so much money on 4K, he doesn't get the rates he deserves.
Exactly. So,
which is what is paining him.
But is
No, I'm not
him
talking
or
about
his team
mine.
going and
This is an
advocating-
industry problem. It is not my problem.
But it's
only.
paining you, right?
No.
It's not paining you, it's okay then. No problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm saying that, as an industry, we have to keep going back to the advertiser and educating them that the
Does
kind
he
of
want to be
content-
educated? He just wants his commission. You dealt with agencies. Does he want to be
No,
educated?
so believe me, the reason we are growing even in my, smallest channels to the topmost channel is that we engage with advertisers as well and educate the kind of content I am producing and why it deserves to have a higher price than whatever my, let's say, a CPM of a ZTV is. At the back of my envelope, every time I calculate CPT as well. So I may not be, having a conversation of CPM or a CPT with the advertiser or with the advertising agency. They may ask me a CPRP, but at the back of my envelope, I'm calculating my CPT if it is going up or not. Because that is how my price point is going to go up. And I go and then talk to him in his language that if your CPRP was this, I'm going to take this CPRP, which is going to take my CPT up. And not my only CPRP up. Ultimately, for me, CPRP, CPT, all that, I don't know whose language it is. For me, it is my price point of my 10 second, is it going up or not? That's what matters to me. And all my other calculation happens around that. Plain and simple.
If I can add a point here, I think...
Can you identify yourself? I can't.
Sorry.
So that's, yeah. I thought it was in the... Good Lord.
I told Anil, you are wrong.
Huh? अरे यार कब से ही बोला मैं? I'm just trying to incite a debate and a conversation on this issue.
Just a point in between. Ashish, the same advertising community bought CPMs in digital. Didn't get commissions even. We paid commissions for how many years now? 26. 1992 Z was launched. We were still not able to sell CPMs. So it is not only their fault. It is, I think, 100% our fault the way we sold it.
That's why I'm saying, sir, responsibility, that's why I started with, the responsibility is back to the broadcaster, that we have to go back and educate advertisers as well as agencies that what for the content he's buying his ads on has a certain unique value, and that value has to be derived. Now that value you derive through CPM. CPM, you're talking about a currency. I'm saying get out of the conversation of currency.
No, because see, he's buying eyeballs. Raj said that what the advertiser does, say suppose bharatmatrimony.com, he sees digital is giving him 20 million impressions. When our figures go, we delivered 4,000 CPRP. He doesn't know CPM. Either you educate the corporate.
He knows the CPM and CPT very well.
No,
Today,
you'll be shocked.
As he, just
advertiser
Elvis said
knows.
that 25 rupees is the CPM for
He
YouTube.
knows CPMs, but he prefers to use CPRP.
What is the CPT of television? It's 7 rupees.
Do you mean to say that the advertising agency is presenting to the advertiser
Yes.
CPTs?
Yes.
Then why is not buying CPTs?
So
He's
that's
selling CPTs, but he's not buying CPTs. Funny.
सर आप क्लाइंट और
डजन में बेचते हैं और किलो में खरीदते हैं, ऐसा कैसे
client और
चलेगा?
एजेंसी की अगर आप जाके मीटिंग्स में देखोगे तो दे आर प्रेजेंटिंग इन CPTs also. Now problem is that the advertiser is putting, obviously for him, for the value he's spending on advertisement, he wants more ROIs. That's why they give their agencies much tougher benchmarks to work upon, and because of which, because even the price point is being now today not controlled by the marketing guy or the CEO of the company. It's being controlled by the procurement guy. So
Commercial.
yeah. So he's saying that with the same value, I want lower price. That's how it is.
So what's the solution? Or do we just call it quits and it's inconclusive?
I think
Like it has been for many years.
If I had the solution, then I would be probably, it's a work in progress. I think we are all engaging with each other as an advertiser and bodies.
I think I'll just
Anil has a thing to has a point to make.
Anil will find a solution over a drink.
Yes.
I think that's, but let's get through with Raj's session next. I hope it's going to be very interesting, and I know it is. A big round of applause to them for being, and to all of you all.
He wanted to put some point.
Sorry,
maybe.
Girish, continue.
I just wanted to make one small point here, that when we talk about, the point that you made about it's the responsibility with the broadcasters to do the change. Reality is that all things being equal, the responsibility will never be taken, because obviously there are a lot of other compulsions. But the only point I want to make is, and this is with a bit of a lump of salt here, but next 2 years, there is an opportunity for that change to happen. And I think one being because the tariff order, once viewership levels and subscription levels find their own stability and reality, there is an opportunity for broadcasters to now start thinking, right? Now, to move towards CPMs and away from CPRP. That's point one. Point two, and it's unfortunate what's happened with Ecom, but the reality is that whenever
There won't be an equanimity on. We had a session at Vidnet a few days ago, and there's a lot of the broadcaster-led OTTs versus the independent OTTs.
That's fine.
There's the entire.
Fine. I'm not getting into that. Yeah. I'm just saying, at some point, way measurements are going, it is inevitable that there will be digital measurement, TV measurement, all coming together. It's a while away, unfortunately. When that does also start coming into reality, that's again going to be the second opportunity that comes through to start pushing through CPMs. These are the only two external factors which give an opportunity. Otherwise, I don't see anything changing. And if we miss this chance over the next 2 years...
I'm dreading his programmatic prescription. I'm dreading that. And as is Raj, I think.
I just want to add regarding broadcaster responsibilities to what you said in a different perspective. Okay, now in CAS, the rave share for the pay channels, the rave share between pay channels in CAS, in DAS was 33. The cable operator gets 33%, MSO gets 33%, broadcaster got 33%. Now with the new tariff order, suddenly it has changed to 80-20. In our nation, the broadcasters have got everything they have desired. Okay, and if there is a little bit of contradiction that it just happened on this panel discussion, that with the new tariff order, the revenues are expected to rise or expected to fall. If the revenues are going to fall, it is going to affect the cable operators down the line, and the last mile is going to be in a serious problem. And this is where the broadcasters need to think of sharing fairly with the last mile and the MSO. 80-20 is not the right solution. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. A big round of applause to all of you all for making this a very good session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, this is not my point of view. It's just to foster debate. Thank you.
Thank you all panelists for a great session.